Hello. Oh no, Zoom is acting up. Why is OBS doing this to me? Ah, there we go. We're back. For some reason, Zoom closed on me, and I have no idea why. But we're good now.
Unfortunate.
We're back. Hello. How's everyone doing? Almost a seamless transition. First things I'd like to say is, even though I work from home and thought, oh hey, social isolation, working from home won't really change that much about my day to day because I already do it. Turns out my wife and kid are also at home, so there's a solid chance you will hear a crying baby in the background of this episode. Apologies there. Anyways, this is Your Brand, Your Business. How are you guys doing? Today we are talking about the super exciting topic of taxes, which is both very relevant for right now and oddly not as relevant as you might expect. Anyways, Ernest, who are you? What are we talking about?
I
Why?
am.
Why taxes?
I am Ernest Jones, and I'm just so tired. I'm a CPA, and
There's
I
a
work.
reason we haven't done this for a couple weeks.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a CPA, and I specialize in helping people who are content creators, um, supporting in the game industry with their taxes, getting them filed, IRS compliance, stuff like that. And some stuff's happened in the last week.
So I'll say this. Hi, I'm Galen Cortina. I run a financial planning firm, also work with streamers. I literally sent out an email Friday morning to talk about how the tax payment but not filing deadline was pushed back. Did I have that right? Anyways,
Yeah,
payment
you
but
did.
not filing deadline was pushed back. And then, like, within half an hour of me sending this email, they pushed out an announcement saying, by the way, both filing and payment are now delayed. So I got like a couple confused responses from clients being like, wait a second, are you sure? And I had to send a correction and be like, it's actually both now. I feel so prepared and smart. Thanks for changing everything.
Well, yeah. So what I was gonna say is it made me really mad. So what we're talking about, the most important thing, if you're listening, your number one takeaway is this: is that the deadline for the federal filing of U.S. taxes got moved 90 days from April 15th to July 15th. In addition to that, the deadline to make the payment got extended to July 15th as well. And what Galen's referring to is that they did a dumb thing, and every tax professional thought it was dumb, um, without question. Like, the toothpaste had like 9 out of 10 dentists agree, 10 out of 10 tax professionals agreed. What they did initially was they moved the payment deadline back 90 days, but they kept the filing deadline the same. Doesn't really make sense to do that because every taxpayer can file an automatic 6-month extension, no harm, no foul. And so what you were really looking at was that, say you were heavily impacted by this pandemic that's going on, and for whatever reason, you wanted to hold your cash for payment until July 15th. Well, that's fine, but then you'd still have to go do a paper extension and still have to like do that paperwork because the deadline wasn't moved. So that was absurd. But again, to underline that, where we stand now is tax day got moved federally to July 15th from April 15th. And I fully expect a lot of states to start mirroring this.
And first quarter payments also.
Oh, yes, thank you. Which is weird because I haven't seen new guidance that the second quarter payments have been moved.
Yeah, that's
Right.
actually
So,
what made me think of it. Is like, well, there is the earlier dates.
yeah. So we'll get into that in a second as well. But when it comes to the states now, I know definitively California, New York, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Maryland have all moved
Say add in
their
Florida
file.
and Texas, and that's half the population of the country.
Right. And well, they don't have state income taxes. So
Oh,
there you
right. There you
go.
go. Never mind.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
covered. We're done.
And Washington doesn't either.
Right.
So essentially, what, 60 to 70% of the U.S. population? Maybe I might be skewing high, but those state deadlines are now July 15th, and I fully expect every state to mimic that.
Could you
However,
imagine the uproar from the people in your state if you were the one who said, no, you still have to file on that original timeline for the state, even though federal is later. Because normally, what federal is or state is for people is that last annoying little part of TurboTax that eats away a bit at their return or their refund.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is I expect the states to mimic it, but I can't guarantee it, right? Because it's just we don't know at this time.
Are you literally fidgeting with a poker chip?
Yeah, of course, it's Vegas, right? Like, hold on, look at this. Ugh, I used to be much better at doing the knuckle roll with it, but it's what I fidget with when I'm thinking about why a return doesn't balance, for example.
Why the Treasury does what it does?
Yeah, so that's the first thing, and that's like all developed really quickly over the last week. If anyone is uh, in chat and wants to go to my Twitter and like signal boost that tweet I did about the deadlines moving, please do so. That'd be great because hopefully, there's a lot going on. I think this is clearly impacting everyone because we all have either a family member or friend who has someone who's in a high risk category, and so taxes should not be the forefront of your mind, right? I don't know where you stand on that though, Galen.
I mean, I agree, and we're already sort of in talks at the federal level, at least in the U.S., about how do we support people who have lost income but still have bills during this time, and because they can't go to work, can't go outside, whatever it is. And so it would seem silly to be offering help on one hand and then being like taxes on the other. But I mean, we don't always do things logically, but at least I can see how that thread tracks, right, in someone's mind. Plus, again, the sort of easiest thing to do to remain popular if you're a politician is something that means that people don't have to pay taxes at the time that they normally think they do, or as much as they thought they would. So, yeah.
Yeah, and so the guidance is like, okay, good. They moved the deadlines 90 days. What does that mean for me? What does that change for me? It actually doesn't change a whole lot.
For me
I would.
being Ernest or me being individual taxpayer?
I mean, I'm so on that point. Let's talk individual taxpayer first, because who cares about that other guy? Individual taxpayer, I don't think that changes your overall strategy and guidance, because ultimately, if you are getting a refund, you still want to get your taxes done and filed as soon as possible, especially because of what's going on, globally. You'll probably want that additional cash in your pocket for liquidity. Counter side of that, if you normally owe taxes, you should have them done and even filed potentially, so you know how much you owe and you know how to plan for that based on your emergency funds, what you have available to you. You may need to throw it on a payment plan because you were talking on another thing earlier this or last week, Galen, or something, about how the interest rate and the penalties for not paying on time aren't that punitive.
Yeah, it's based on the federal rate, which just got slashed, right? So it's like the effective rate was something like 6%, right, annually. So it's probably a bit lower than that now, something like that. Anyways,
Yeah.
which puts it way lower than credit cards, right? So if it's a choice between paying your taxes in full or at least a larger chunk to them versus paying off credit cards, it's a pretty easy mathematical choice to say that the credit cards are a bigger problem. And you can, like you were saying, file for a payment plan with the feds that lets you do installments instead of the whole balance.
Yep. And so that's kind of the major takeaway in terms of news and developments. Now, for me personally, I'll tell you, since I just said, hey, nothing really changes for you in terms of a taxpayer. Nothing. I'm not treating it like anything is different either. So I'm still working towards as if the deadline was April 15th. So I'm still going to be filing extensions for everyone who's not done by April 15th, because
extensions do push the filing date past the current 3-month delay because they're 6-month delay. So,
and I'm concerned about them not having it right in their system, just because, like this is kind of a sole and separate IRS function, but people aren't able to be, at work. And so if there is some sort of issue in the programming of it, I don't know. And I'd rather just have the extension on file just to have it. So yeah. So that's kind of the update. And then I think what we're going to do the rest of the show is looking at our show notes is we're going to kind of talk about just getting organized for taxes and things like that.
Which is, I mean, I wanted to make sure that we hit these updates because we've talked about the getting organized for tax before. It doesn't hurt to reiterate. Plan on reiterating, right? But also, it's definitely I think the updates are the sort of most relevant for people who regularly watch this show. But so first thing to ask, what do our 1040s look like this year? Because they changed them last year. Do they look like they did last year? Do they look like they did before? Are they some new wonderful formulation
No,
that magically
no.
solves everything?
So, well, I don't know about that. I don't. Uh, no. So what happened is this is the second year under the Tax Cut and Jobs Act. This is the current administration's new tax law and all of those things that fell out. As part of that, there were revisions to the 1040. So if you've been doing your taxes for a long while, you should maybe see differences from what it used to be to last year. They have changed it a
Does it
little
all
bit.
fit on a postcard?
I mean, it does. It's just if it was 40 postcards, I've moved past that rage, Galen. It no longer is triggering. But they've kind of combined it into two postcards taped together. Actually, so that analogy was a little, a good prompt. But overall, we're in the same kind of tax environment in terms of laws and rules as we were in 2018 for that tax year. So what that means is,
I'm half on mute because of crying baby. So if I'm slow to respond to something, it's because I'm having to go unmute.
You're good. When is nap time normally? Did she go down for a nap?
She was asleep when this started and has since woken up. So, and nap time is whenever the hell she gets angry enough that she's tired that she gets through the rage and falls asleep because.
So full release the Kraken mode. Got it. No?
Yes. And I was at the house this morning for 6 hours waiting for internet install, so poor Katie had all day with Kiki.
Ooh.
Yeah.
All right. So first we'll talk about tax documents that you should be organizing and where you can expect them as if you were a content creator or say you also were working a day job at the time and had employment income. So if you work a job, you should be getting a form W-2. That's going to outline how much your wages were or salary were for the year. It's going to show how much federal income tax withholding there was, and how much state income tax withholding there was, if any. And so that's going to be your number one form. Most people are familiar with that, and that's kind of the go-to form for that. Now, if you are a broadcaster, I'm going to rattle off places where I've this year specifically I've seen people get forms. So you have your 1099 from Twitch. That's taxcentral.amazon.com. You use the email that you did the tax interview under, which may be separate from the channel login email or business-facing emails you may have. Now, those were all issued this year. Last year, there was an issue with them being incorrect. I have seen no issue with them this year from anyone. Now, Good. I've had to explain to a few people that if they are still depositing in PayPal, that bits will not be reflected on that 1099. You have to go to the payout dashboard to get all that data. It's under your channel.
Count as royalties, right?
Your subs and ad share is considered royalties.
Oh, there you go.
Bits is considered non-employee comp. So what Galen just asked was, if you look at your 1099 miscellaneous from Twitch, you'll see an amount in box 2 always. And in box 7, that's where they put the amount you earned in bits. But if you have that deposited in PayPal, your Twitch payments, they do not report that. And there's a nuanced reporting reason as to why. I'm going to link that stupid Medium article that I wrote. There was supposed to be one posted on Streamer Square, but I don't know if it ever got posted.
We can ask Loco.
We can ask Loco. Definitely ask Loco. But there's that article for people, and it basically breaks down some of the nuanced IRS reporting rules as to why you won't see bits on the 1099, and that's only if you have it go to PayPal. So then, Oh, go ahead, Galen.
No, continue. I was just gonna say, and so 10.99 from Twitch,
Yep.
10.99 from PayPal.
Now here's the interesting thing. So, because of how the support meta has changed on Twitch, you don't see nearly as many tips and like
Oh,
donut
right.
wars, right? So you see a lot more of the way the communities are supporting broadcasters, and obviously this varies by creator, but it's through gifting of subs, subbing, and bits, probably in that order of magnitude, right? Because you have like your TP barons, your oil, princes and princesses who, that's the meme, right? That's the meme. Am I hip with the kids? Am I doing it?
Yep, you're
You look
totally.
awkward.
Yep.
Okay, I'm killing it, crushing it.
I
Uh,
can bring my daughter in here and ask.
Okay, good. Kiki's down with me. But so anyway, if you have it go if you have your Twitch payments go directly to your PayPal, you will likely get the PayPal tax document. So that's a 1099K, and that is issued for payment processors. So for credit card processors and things like that. Now, the reason I say if you have your Twitch payments go to your PayPal, you will have um, the 1099K generated is because to have a 1099K generated, you have to have 20K deposited into the account in business transactions
Mm,
and
that's a pretty
200
big tipping threshold.
200 transactions. Yeah.
Right.
So, my expectation is that if you are a full-time creator, I think I'd expect the channel support to be over the threshold, and then small tips from your community to get you over the 200 transaction limit.
Mm-hmm.
In recent years, just from my own experience, people who have the Twitch payments go directly to their to their bank account, go directly to their bank account. They're not generating the 1099K from PayPal anymore.
So their tips might not be on a document that they're receiving. They have to go
But
and get it.
they correct. So what Galen's alluding to, and I've had to have this discussion a lot of times with people, is like, well, there's no tax document, or these are all my friends, or
So
you know,
if if it's over $600, will Streamlabs send you a 1099 then?
Streamlabs is different. So we'll get to that. That's a
Okay.
good question, and we'll put a pin in it. But your tips, whether you get that stupid 1099K or not, it is taxable. You have an obligation to report all of your revenue. Um, if you're trying to get an edge in tax, get aggressive with your expenses, start thinking about things that you spend money on, and we'll get to this later, but start thinking about things that you spend money on that you can connect to your stream. I found that oftentimes creators are not aggressive enough.
Right.
I can't tell you the number of times that I've told people, hey, where's your gifted subs? Like say you had a month where you were matching, for every 5 subs, you'll
You
gift
have a
five.
phone, don't you?
Right. But no, I've had people who didn't even know they could write off matching gift subs,
Mm-hmm.
and it blows my mind. Do not do that.
Do not match gift subs.
Do not write it off. Do not
Nice.
expense it.
Nice.
Um,
You got there.
okay. Now the other thing is if you are on another platform,
Well, we just had to
Mixer.
talk about. Oh, I thought. Never mind. I
Oh
was gonna say
yeah,
we just had to
no,
talk
yeah.
about OnlyFans right before
We
this. So
we
should
will.
you, if you're on there, should you expect?
I
Well,
can tell you definitively that OnlyFans does issue 1099s.
Oh, you got yours.
I did get mine.
Okay.
I listen, killing it in the like middle-aged doughy accountant market, just crushing.
Well, I was
Laying
gonna
queen.
say I have to assume that the DMs I keep getting from Ernest the Twink are your alt. So
I mean, I have a skincare routine, I'll have you know, but I don't know if it's doing that well, and it's like rough because I'm not sleeping enough during this time of year. But
But
you know,
OnlyFans does send them.
they
Streamlabs, you
do.
said, was different.
Well, why'd you just cut off the ripping of the jokes? I had so much more.
No,
So
continue,
disappointing.
continue.
No, you broke up the flow. But yeah, so OnlyFans does issue a 1099. I've seen it definitively. I do not know though if they issue it digitally. So the clients of mine who obtained them,
They got
um,
mailed?
they got it mailed. They took a photo of a hard copy document. So yeah.
OnlyFans, very tech forward.
Well, I mean, I was listening to the last one. Austin was saying that, I mean, the protect person was telling her to use Internet Explorer. I couldn't even think of it. It was just so
Oh,
wild.
really?
Yeah, so I don't know how tech forward they are.
This internet? I thought they didn't they rebrand it or whatever.
Oh, is
I
it
haven't
not?
used it. It's Microsoft Edge now, right?
Oh, it is Microsoft Edge. So
Do you have to go back versions then? Use IE 10
maybe
or something?
it's an old platform that still is
Ugh.
like Flash enabled or something.
Like 8, 9 years ago, I worked at a company where to use their intranet, you had to use IE, but that was a long time ago.
Hmm. Uh,
Anyways,
yeah. So Streamlabs, to answer your question, getting back on like where content creators get forms of income. That is different. So when someone uses Streamlabs to tip you, they're using their credit card
mm-hmm.
directly. And so what happens is they actually classify it as non-employee comp.
Okay.
So they don't treat themselves as a payment processor. So if you hit over $600, that's when you should get it. But I've seen Streamlabs 1099s for as low as like 299. So just because they don't issue, they're not required to, it looks like
Right, but they
Streamlabs
might still.
is.
I mean, that's good. That makes sense.
Yep. One thing I will say is that for Streamlabs, I've heard some people say like it will hold your money and you've got to manually go in and draw it out. I don't know if that's still a thing.
That was for credit cards.
That was for credit cards. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, so let's see. We talked about the three platforms where you could be getting it if you're like a traditional creator, let's say.
Yeah, I'd say, what if you had something like a creator code for the Epic Store? Would you expect a 1099 there?
Yes. Yep.
So basically,
Uh,
anywhere you're earning over $600 in business revenue, you should expect a 1099.
yep. You should be getting one from YouTube. I'm big on YouTube. Like I think you should always be utilizing it in some form if you're doing a live stream as a creator, just because having canned content allows for a different platform.
Mm-hmm.
That's just like my personal philosophy for it. OnlyFans, what other ones are there? If you did any activations, you should also be getting a 1099. Either, and from my experience, is even if you are booked to an agency, oftentimes they will just facilitate the deal in payment, and you will be still receiving a 1099 from the company, the sponsorship company directly.
Okay.
Um, there is some overlap though, where the agency will also issue the 1099. So so for example, let's say your agency X and they book a deal and they kind of avail their whole talent roster to the company, and they like a la carte pick a few or not, provide like, oh, you can do this if you'd like to. Do you think you'd want to?
I'll
They
take
end
two
up
locos and a hunter.
right. And so yeah, essentially is my understanding of how that process works. I could be wrong. And then the agency will issue you the tax document. Keep in mind that depending on the agency, they may not back off their commission or management fee for brokering that deal for you, and they may send you the gross amount of the activation.
Oh,
So, for example, let's say you do
interesting.
a gig for Call of Apex Modern Fortnite, and they pay you $10,000. Your agency takes
I'm sorry for the odd. I have a baby who still doesn't always sleep through the night.
You're fine. It's tax. It's boring. I get it.
No. She woke up twice last night, and my sleep was not great.
Do you think she is sensing the impending move?
No, I think she has a cold, and her nose gets stuffed.
And then just mad at the world.
Yeah.
I gotcha. But let's say you do that activation for 10K and your management company takes 2,000. They may issue you the 1099 for 10,000.
Gotcha.
So I get this question a lot, like, oh, what do I do in those circumstances? You, at a minimum, you always report your revenue at least as much as all of your tax documents total.
And then you just add expenses for the remainder, presumably.
Exactly. So
it is an expense. I mean, you're literally paying a contractor functionally to source deals for you and manage contracts and stuff like that. So that makes sense.
It's still an issue this year, and I think it will be until I'm either dead or until the heat death of the universe. But for creators to still use PayPal to deposit their Twitch funds, it does end up in double reporting. So what I mean by that is PayPal issues you a 1099K for 100,000, 50,000, whatever. Twitch issues you a 1099 for 20. To the IRS, it looks like you've made, $70,000 or $120,000, but the PayPal tax document is inclusive
Right.
of the Twitch money. So what I do personally and how I report it on tax returns is I report that grossed up incorrect number of 70 or 120,000. And the reason for that is because IRS also receives a copy of those documents. So to IRS, they show again that it looks like you should be reporting 70 or $120,000.
Right. Your revenue needs to add up to what's getting reported to them, or else that's a flag to them to say this person might be
Yep.
fudging things.
Yeah, and we'll get into what letter you'll get, but so I report that number, and then I clearly denote that this is an expense for duplicate amounts in PayPal.
Mm-hmm.
Back it off, and I've not had an issue. I've talked to an IRS agent about it, like, hey, how would you report this? Multiple times they said, yeah, we gross it up and we adjust it as an expense.
Okay. Makes sense.
If you do end up misreporting, you get what's known as a CP 2000 letter or an underreporter letter, and people freak out when they get correspondence from IRS. It
Right.
is not end of world.
I got an IRS notice saying I owed $25, and until I opened it, right when I saw a letter from the IRS, even though I knew I had done things pretty much to the book.
And you're, a professional who works adjacent to that industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Like, and directly interacts with it in some cases.
So let's sidetrack. CP2000 sounds like it should be an interesting robot, not a form. Is there a reason that it's named that?
It's just their internal coding for whatever reason. So like, it's one of the most common letters. So that's why it's like at the forefront of my mind, but it's just their internal tracking.
Okay.
And all it does is it'll say like, hey, taxpayer, we think you should have reported this much. You only reported, Y instead of X.
Right.
X is more. Do you think this is like, did you forget this? Is this wrong? We think you owe us this much more money because of this. That's when people freak out. Like, oh my God, IRS says I owe more.
So if the IRS knows how much you made, why don't they just tell you that number and then you work from there?
Oh, this is great. I love this. This is such a softball. You're the best, bud. So let's take a step back to last year when TurboTax got into a bunch of problems. If anyone follows the news, TurboTax is supposed to be a free file provider, and you can pay money to them if your return gets more complicated. That is like Australia. But what happens is they got into trouble because of lack of free filing. And there was some debate about like, well, IRS should know how much I made and all these things. They should just file the return on my behalf. Filing is way too complicated in this country. And as a statement, I agree with that wholeheartedly, even though it's like my profession and it's how I earn a living. I agree wholeheartedly. However, you can't blame TurboTax, but TurboTax is not the reason that it is so complicated.
Well, they certainly have contributed to it not getting less complicated. They didn't cause the initial problem, but they've certainly gotten in the way of the subsequent potential fixes.
Fair. That argument aside, though, what I would say is think of this. IRS doesn't know if you're married. IRS doesn't know if you got divorced. IRS doesn't know if you had kids. IRS doesn't know if you should be claiming the kids or if someone else should be claiming the kids. IRS knows that you made income from being a self-employed individual. They have no idea how much you spent to make that, so they have no idea of your expenses.
Right.
And so there's a lot of information in terms of how we file taxes where it is not available to them, and that is why they cannot prepare a return. Specifically the expense side of things.
Theoretically, though, they should be able to give you a top-line revenue figure based on what's been reported to them.
Correct. But then, so I've thought about this as a thought experiment. So if that was the case, then what you're talking about is they would give you a half filled out form, and then you would then like fill out the rest of it. Like, does that really kind of solve the issue of the pain that is filing your taxes? And
it solves the issue of you filling it out, it going to them telling you you're wrong, and then having to figure out subsequently. It removes some back and forth.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
If we say my process is I hand this to you, and then you hand it back to me if it's wrong and tell me to fix it. Why not just tell me what you have in the first place so that I can do any like proactive
Reconcile from
fixing,
there.
reconciliation? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Now we've turned philosophical
Instead
briefly.
of
We'll get
getting
back
a
on
howler
track.
from the IRS.
Fair. I think the issue is then you'd have to move all of the filing deadlines back significantly because so one dirty little secret is that your kind of tax file with IRS is not considered complete until 18 months after year end. Meaning I've seen 1099s and W-2s show up on taxpayers' accounts the following year. So for example, we just
God.
wrapped the 2019 tax year, which means stuff is posting like your W-2s getting sent, your Twitch 1099, that's all ending up kind of assigned to your social in a database at IRS. I've seen stuff post all the way into the following calendar year, meaning 2019 stuff is getting posted in 2021.
Oh.
So that's another issue. I mean, there's like a lot of there's ways you can fix this, but you kind of have to have a broad overview and understanding of the system at large, and then kind of reverse engineer how you would like address all of these issues, because then you don't even get into the issue of the states, right?
There
And
are
states,
several of them.
there are several of them, and states tax returns tend to flow from the federal return, and they do communicate and require that as well. So needless to say, our tax system is not great. Okay, so we talked. Oh, yeah.
I was just gonna say. So we talked about the how you get info from companies on the income that you've earned through them. We've talked about some of the potential issues with our systems, just sort of in general. How do you write off some of those expenses, like you mentioned, that things that the government doesn't know? How do you go about then making sure you're in a position where you can submit a return with some confidence?
So what we've always said on this show is that you should be tracking your expenses as you go, right? I
It's one
can
of the
tell
first
you,
things I work on with most new clients.
I can tell you that of my client base, and I would say traditional and broadcaster, you're looking at maybe 25% that actually do that. I was trying to like really think and be fair. I think it's maybe 25% that actively track their expenses during the year.
I don't understand that mentality. Like, I
Well, listen, it
love
takes
being
all
able to
kinds.
check QuickBooks to see how business is doing. How can you not want to know how your business is doing?
What do you
I say this as the man who also has yet to hear a response from two different potential contractors for multi-$1,000 jobs on my new house. So maybe I should understand a bit more how people just don't want fucking money that they could get. I don't know.
I mean, you're right, but at the same time, expenses going out the door isn't helping money get in the door. But you should be making better decisions based on that. No, it's
Time is money, friend.
I yeah, I got
And
it.
they're
I got
wasting
it,
their time by
Alex.
not doing it.
Yeah, it's fair. But let's talk about. So I'm going to go into my standard, like, what is a business expense pitch,
Do it.
right? So autopilot, it is. I want you to close your eyes and think of all the business that used to exist, that exists currently, and that would exist in the future. For example, Justin TV. Yeah, it's entertainment, but this was not a thing that existed 10 years ago, right? Or maybe 12 now. So the rule for what a business expense is this: it has to be both ordinary and necessary. And so how I like to explain that is it common in your industry, and is it helpful for what you do? So for anyone who is like a true like Streamer Square stan, and you watch both shows,
They have
for
like
example,
5 shows now.
well, no, but both shows today. Pardon me.
Oh.
Thank you. So what I would say is if you're on OnlyFans, right, and you are buying pieces, like fashion pieces for your shoots, that is a business expense, absolutely, right? Because it's going into the production of your content, right? It directly touches your content. If you are a cosplayer, spoiler alert, our show next week is on the business of cosplay, and you travel for a shoot. Like say you go to Japan or you go to New Zealand or whatever for a shoot. You go to Utah for a dried out lake bed, salt lake bed, right? In the desert. And you're shooting content, that's a business expense. You may have fun on the trip. You may, go sightseeing one day. But ultimately, if you are there and the purpose of it was to shoot content, that's a business expense.
Mm-hmm.
So, I get this question all the time is like, well, what can I write off? My question isn't, I never say like, can I or can't I? I ask them, did you spend this money because you have the business, whether administratively or in the creation of your revenue generating activities?
And I write off a lot of things that a financial planner normally wouldn't, like subs, right? Because it is for the business that I run ordinary and necessary to be subbing to clients, for instance, right? Or subbing to potential clients. So it's not even necessarily just... So it starts at industry level, right? What is ordinary and necessary for your industry? I also write off financial planning software, right? But then it's even more specific than that down to your business. What is something that makes sense for your business? Just got a question about lunches, which is always an interesting one. This example specifically, Wolf, is an interesting one.
Yeah. So what I like to say is when it comes to this, like people say like, oh, I can write off like a lot of my home office I've made at a studio. There are some things though you can't expense. And what it comes down to is you need a place to lay your head. You need a place to poop. You have to eat, right? So if it's like your normal...
Preferably separate spaces.
Ideally, but maybe you're in a studio. And it's just the toilet's right in the middle of it. But if you have, if you're like traveling in that example of, traveling from client to client during the day, I would argue that's your normal course of business, and having a meal during your day, like you would brown bag it, right?
Yep.
If you were trying to be frugal. So that's not a business expense.
That's always what I've heard in terms of like local travel is it your normal day, and would you normally be having lunch in the places that you'd be going to anyways, versus like traveling to a con where no, I'm never going to go to Boston for lunch as a part of my normal day.
Great chatter though.
Good chatter, yeah. But I mean, my extended family owns a couple fish houses around here that has really good chatter. So
and the other thing is when it comes to expenses, it can't be considered extravagant and lavish. And again, like you think about that, extravagant and lavish for you and I, Galen, is much different than, say, I don't know, Jeff Bezos.
Just a little. I think a lot of things are different
hold on,
for us.
Let's break that down, though, because like you had a lot of business expense thoughts in that like chortle that you just had.
Right.
And that's right. Like that chortle, that's like the word of the day. But what would you think about like something that potentially Jeff Bezos is expensing, or Amazon is expensing on behalf of Jeff Bezos versus like you and I?
Taking politicians out to meals?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking just like the private jet.
Yeah, well, that too.
Right? Like that'd be absurd for us to have a private jet. Like that would be considered extravagant and lavish.
Right.
But like for him...
I need to go back and forth to Vegas to see you.
Yeah, sure. Oh man, it's going to be so different when you move because...
I need something at the Camarillo airport. Duh.
Yeah. But listen, when you move, no one will ever think that we live in the same apartment again.
I think the walls are about this color.
Oh no.
I was debating, since it is like a place that we own, painting and I won't need to maintain. So my office, not that you can see this, there's a door into the office right there, and then there's a slider door there that goes out to our laundry room, which is like attached but detached, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I won't have to maintain that walkway. So I'll be able to actually like move my desk so I'm not, with a corner awkwardly right there.
Chef, you're absolutely right. I've been waiting to do this. I just need to lean in because we use the same mic. Welcome to Serial.
I have been, oh God. I've been debating painting the wall behind me green to chroma it.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Would Katie allow you to do that?
It's an accent wall, Ernest. And accent walls are all the rage.
Okay. All right. I've heard them called accente. but fine, you, whatever. So before we got derailed, though, we were talking about extravagant and lavish expenses, right? Let's say you are a shoutcaster and you are traveling somewhere, and I had this discussion with someone, and they earn revenue from it. You know, even if they booked first class, they'd still show profit from the business.
Mm-hmm.
It's an international flight, and it's basically a red eye flight, and they go, you know, they are live shoutcasting the event that day. Do you think first class is okay?
Oh yeah, absolutely. If it's something that lets them perform at a level that they wouldn't otherwise, then it's definitely reasonable. I mean, this is an actual life example, right? That you're using. We both have a client who has flown internationally and really country hopping for events that flies first class or has flown first class because they can land in the morning in a different country in a different time zone and still be a capable shoutcaster as opposed to because they had a full friggin' bed that they could lay out in and stuff versus, you know, stuck in coach all cramped up where they didn't sleep at all.
Right.
We're not talking first class pound drinks. We're talking first class get the extra room, sleep, comfortable stuff.
And that's the thing. It's like that person that I'm talking about was completely stunned about that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Sirius asks a question because I think there was another question about.
I mean, serious is that something that would be ordinary and necessary marketing, right? And the answer in that specific case, I'd say probably is an acceptable write-off because again, think about that's market research or that's making industry connections or whatever, right?
So the way I like to phrase it is this. Think about what the true underlying business purpose is, right? Mm-hmm. And be true to like yourself and don't like lie, right? Like, because I've had people be like, I've had
in your heart of hearts, do you believe it?
Well, what's the business purpose? I've had this conversation with someone, and it's just like I asked them once, "Hey, what is the business purpose here?"
Right.
And I say, then they say what it is, and then I say it back to them. So you're telling me that if we have to go to war with IRS and fight over this expense, that this was the business purpose. And if they like hem and haw all, I'm gonna be like, all right, so this is your exposure. Do you still want to run this through?
So you're telling me there's a chance.
And 99% of them walk it back.
Yeah.
Right? Because I'm all about if you have an express business purpose, what was it? What were you trying to accomplish? Right? And it doesn't have to be something that was like you generated a bunch of money from it. Like you earned money. Like say you bought Doom Eternal and you like wanted to mix it up and you were like I'm going to make the reference because Isabel is Bay. Say like you are an Animal Crossing streamer, right? Like it is wholesome stuff.
That is an actual crossover nowadays, but
yeah,
yes.
And that but it would be weird if you're suddenly as your community you like just hard transition into Doom, right? At least I think it would be. And so you may play it and like you may do it for a day and it just does not work out. Your stream hates it, right? Okay, that's still a business expense. Like it was just a failed like that's okay. You know, failure is okay for business expenses.
Yeah, sometimes you need to test out to see whether or not something works. I mean, as a part of this move, I tossed away a banner that I used at an in-person conference marketing thing for helping people, it was a dental association thing, but for helping with student loans. Like, that's something that I used to do as a primary part of my marketing.
Cut your teeth on this financial planning. Change my mind, coffee cup.
No.
No?
But I did toss the little banner thing that I used to put, you know, they'd have the table and you lay it out there kind of a thing. Because I don't need it anymore. Because that was one of the things that I did to generate revenue early on when I still didn't have a ton of clients in industry. And it made sense then, but now it doesn't. But the fact that I used that once and got very little from it doesn't mean it's not a business expense.
Yep, and then I'm going to go to Chef's question because this is a good one. So, do business expenses give you a return on taxes like charity donations do, in the sense that you put money in and you get money back come tax time? So
kind of.
So let's talk very broadly and build to this question.
And before we dive into that, did we have anything left? Because we've been on for just a little under an hour. Did we have anything before more Q&A that we wanted to get to before?
Let me see. So we talked about like what business expenses are. Yeah, I'll hit two things real quick, then we'll answer your question, Chef, not to keep you strung along. So basically, we talked about business expenses. Ordinary and necessary is your two-pronged test. Helpful to the business is common in your industry.
Yep.
What's the business purpose for it?
Be right back.
Spreadsheet it, categorize it. You don't have to report every single game you purchase, right? So you bought like Doom, you bought Animal Crossing, you bought the Animal Crossing Switch, you lucky SOB, blah, 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 blah. You do not break it out. That's all kind of like you would group it broadly in something like supplies or like office expense or things like that. You don't, show every $50, $20 purchase or every single like Xbox points purchase or whatever. And so you categorize them, you group them, and then you report them on your tax return as part of your Schedule C or something like that.
Someone was being very annoying to her mother.
Aww. She looks so happy though and calm.
Spit up. Oh, and we're gone again.
So, make sure you categorize your expenses. Now, the other things I want to hit on briefly are quarterly payments, quarterly estimates, doing your quarterlies. There's a lot of misconception here because people think like that means, oh, I have to file something, or, how do I prep for that? Let's talk about why you do quarterlies. The reason you do it is because we live in a pay-as-you-go system. And so what that means is that you have to pay the taxes as you go, and you do it to avoid penalties and interest on it. To be considered penalty proof, you have to pay either 100% of the current year's liability, or I'm going to use the conservative estimate, Galen, or 110% of last year's tax liability. So in other words, most people's businesses and tax situations don't tend to change drastically year over year. Like maybe you have, a beautiful baby girl and that leads to a tax credit, or you pop off and you become like a top 10 creator on Twitch because of whatever, a new game, or, something goes viral, who knows? But let's say, for the most part, it's the same year over year. What ends up happening is, let's say your tax liability was $10,000. To be penalty proof, you'd have to pay $11,000 in 2020. So all you do is you take 11,000, you divide it by 4, and you make the quarterly payments at the IRS website. It's that simple. So pretty straightforward. So we talked about that, and the other thing I want to hit on very briefly is we've gotten this question a lot this tax season, and I don't know why, Galen, but it's about like, do I need to have an LLC to write off business expenses? Right. And the answer is
nope.
Nope, because you can have a, don't, JD, please. That's just, no. But even a sole prop is just a business you're doing without any sort of formal legal or tax structure behind it. And that's just a sole prop. It gets reported on Schedule C. If Noah were here, he would say, should you have an LLC immediately? Yes, right? Because that's the right legal answer. But you've got to make your own decisions and live your life. That's what I wanted to hit on. And then to get to Chef's questions of, I'm going to repeat it, do business expenses give you a return on taxes like charity donations do, in the sense that you put money in and you get money back come tax time? So broadly, what happens is when you get a refund, what does that mean, Galen?
A refund means you paid too much in taxes. You
right.
gave the government an interest-free loan.
Right. So what happens is with charitable donations or things like that, you don't really see people itemizing as much because of things that happen in the
doubling of the standard deduction.
But business expenses are better than charitable donations from a pure tax standpoint, because what's happening is the business expense happens before the deduction. So in other words, you're taxed on your net income from the business. So again, easy numbers, let's say you have 10,000 in revenue and you have 9,000 in business expenses. You are not taxed on the 10,000, you're taxed on the net difference, which is $1,000. If that's your only form of income, you're gonna pay $150 or so in tax, and that's it. Now, if you had, I'm gonna ignore the standard deduction in this example because I kind of boxed myself into a corner. But let's say you have $10,000 in taxable income and you have, $9,000 in charitable donations. That doesn't get you anywhere. So what ends up happening is you end up paying $1,000 in tax. I agree, Sirius. She's the light and completely distracting.
She makes working from home a lot more difficult because this is
Um,
about as calm as she gets. And even now, she's like doing her little parakeet bob dancing, like you can see.
oh no. So we'll get out of here. But then to answer Iron Wolf's questions, so this is going to be specific to that's a question specific to you, but to answer how I approach this generally with clients that have back filings is you only have 3 years to file a return if you are getting a refund. So if you were a W-2 employee, for example, we couldn't go any further back than 2016, I believe. I think 2016 falls off October 15, 2020. Now, if you are self-employed in those years prior and you owe tax, you're probably getting letters. It's a whole process to get caught up depending on how far back you haven't filed. But at a minimum, I would start by getting together your tax documents, and it can be quite an undertaking. So it's not something that you have to, not have to, I'm sorry. It's not something that you are going to solve over the course of like a couple of weeks, because that's about how long it takes for me to onboard a new client, figure out what they've got going on, and get their stuff in and prep a draft and get it finalized. That's about, my turnaround time in terms of calendar, right? I would say if you have multiple returns, it ends up being, 3 months for me to kind of work through it all and make sure that we've turned over every rock and really been thorough with it.
10 years or 100 years, either one would be hard.
Yeah, 10 years. I would say what you should be looking at is how you earned income in 2015 and prior. If you don't have, if you aren't getting IRS correspondence, it likely means that you are in refund positions for those years. So I'd look into getting them filed.
They aren't reaching out to you like, hey, we owe you money.
Yeah, so it's not, but some other things though, like if you're trying to get a home, they always want your tax returns. And so, that can be an issue. If you're looking to get serious lending, it can be an issue. So I always advise getting returns filed just so you can have a position on IRS, because technically for the majority of people, 7 years is the window for how far they can go back. And you don't start that clock if you don't file. So it starts from your file date. All right, so we went a little over, but while Galen is making faces for baby, I will tease or I will promo next week's show. So I'm rotating out. It will be a 4-person show on the business of cosplay. It's going to be Galen, maybe Kiki.
As long as we're still working from home, there's a chance.
And then Noah will be on there along with Carolyn Womack, who works with Noah, I think in the area of like DMC takedowns and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then Danielle Di Nicola, who is a cosplayer in the space, is going to offer that perspective.
Yep. All right. So sorry for the distraction, but someone needs to be watching this kid. My wife is working. So that's your brand, your business. We just wanted to give you some updates, recover some of the basics about tax, as well as give you some of the updates that came out this past week.
Ooh. July 15th, new deadline.
Yep. And Ernest, who are you?
I am Ernest Jones. I am still so very tired, but I am a CPA and I work with creators, game developers, anyone in and around the new media space with their taxes.
That's Dad's microphone.
And who is Dad?
I'm Galen Herbstick Cortina. I'm a financial planner. This time of year, my job is mostly make sure that my clients get their stuff to Ernest. But beyond that, I'm helping them figure out saving for the future, investing, budgeting, insurance, sort of their whole financial life. And that is something that this time of year, like I said, sort of becomes subsumed to tax. So yeah, next week we're going to be talking, Noah and I will be talking about the business of cosplay. We'll have some guests on, and I hope to see you guys then. Bye.
Peace.